Hi, my name's Tea Uglow. Welcome to Talks at Google. This is actually the first time I've ever done one of these. Seems a strange things. I've been watching them for well over a decade. And today we are incredibly lucky to be speaking with Rudrani Chettri, who is a transgender activist. This seems kind of trivial. You may have heard, like we in the West certainly have a lot of transgender activists. Rudrani is something quite special in that regard. They've spent over 10 years working in India, spreading awareness and fighting for LGBTQ rights at a broad level. She founded the Mitr Trust in 2005, which has an aim of reducing both the risks and the stigma around HIV and sexually transmitted infections. In 2015, she founded BOLD, which I'm really looking forward to asking her about, because it's a modeling agency for transgender women and presumably trans men. I will ask her about it. And that's the first in India. I mean, I'm not sure that there were that many elsewhere. She is a national consultant for organizations such as the National AIDS Control Program. She is a model and an actress in her own right. She's just, well, not just finished, but I'm really looking forward to talking about her debut film, which is called The Last Color. There is so much to talk about that I'm very, very glad to welcome to your screens, Rudrani Chettri.
Hello, Tea. How are you?
Hi. I'm very well, thank you. Oh, we've made it. We're here.
Thank you so much. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk and share my experiences.
Well, it is great. I think it's a great honor. It's a great privilege. I think one of the privileges is that the internet affords is that we are finally able to hear your voice and hear about the kind of work that you do. And sort of hear the fight that you've had certainly over the last 10 to 15 years. So it's our honor to have you here. And I was wondering, it's always strange with these sorts of things when we don't particularly have an audience, but we're going to talk for 35 to 45 minutes. And then we will be very interested to hear questions from the audience. So if you do have questions, there is the chat window on YouTube, which you can put your questions into, and we will be able to get to those towards the end. But I thought I might start off with Johnny by just like I introduce you with all of the things that you've done, but maybe you want to introduce yourself. When we want to introduce yourself, how would you introduce yourself when you're meeting people for the first time?
Okay, so thank you, T, once again for giving me this opportunity, and thank you, Google, for giving me this opportunity. So how I usually introduce myself is I start with my name. I usually say my name is Rudrani Chettri and I'm a trans woman. I'm a transgender person, and this is how I identify myself. And I'm not at all apologetic about who I am. And I feel so proud of myself. And I think though the life has been difficult for a trans person in India and also rest of the countries in the world, but I feel very proud that I've born as a trans woman, and I hope that I also, if there's something like next birth, if I get a chance to be a human, I want to be a trans woman again.
Really? Oh, really, that's a fascinating take. Like I think that for so many people it is so hard, and it is it has moments of wonder and joy, but that is a really interesting. Like I'm not sure I think I would always want to be cis, because it seems to be much easier to know how you feel inside. But then maybe it is that they just don't know. I feel sometimes that we understand what it is to feel ourselves and to feel alive as women, in a way that my friends maybe don't quite feel it. And how can you feel something if you have no way to do so? But you would come back, you would do it all again. But it's hard in India, no?
I think we all are creating a better place and better tomorrow. And
Yeah.
I hope if I take a next birth, the situation may not be same, and the word equal will not there anymore, and everything will be so equal, and we'll, we don't even have to emphasize about it. So.
Yes, I do think actually sometimes I think I would much rather. It's a very difficult thing because we have many trans youth. We'll have people watching who are trans, people who are gender sort of questioning, people who are just interested to know about it. And I think that probably we are a generation for whom this is the first and the last generation where we are very visible as later transitioning adults, and it seems we can be optimistic about a world in which children are not perhaps forced to go through a puberty that they do not wish to go through in order to prove that they are in fact trans. But I do think that I think a really useful thing to do as well would be to, I'm not sure of the nature of our audience, but I'm pretty sure that people have misconceptions about what trans life is like in India. I certainly know that I did, and then I had different misconceptions, having learned a little bit about it, because a little information is a dangerous thing. So what do you think, what is it like in society at the moment, and what was it like growing up?
So for sure that first of all, I was, as people who do not understand transgender people, and till date, people who say they are literate, but they are not at all educated about transgender people. So there is whole idea about, transgender kids are those kids who are born intersex or hermaphrodite. And when the idea of, to be born like someone who cannot ever reprocreate and make babies, or go ahead with the family, it has been seen as a problem. And when I was a kid, I understood transgender person as somebody who are evil, who take away children and a lot of other things, but I live this life.
I'm actually going to come back on that, Rudrani. I'm going to come back on that comment about how we're evil and we steal other people's children. But yes, please, like that's a common.
Yes, but I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I blame the system, how they are not ready to communicate. They are not wanting to understand. And as we are talking about this generation, they have been very visible. It's not that transgender people did not exist. Transgender people exist. They face a lot of problem. Till date, they face a lot of problem. And there is a problem where, society treats them as somebody who are not human at all. And the same kind of situation is still there. But the good part is you and me are here talking about, transgender people. And good part is, like, there are people who are watching us, and they are willing to listen, and they're willing to understand, and they're willing to talk to somebody whoever they meet in future who's a transgender person. So this is what the change is. My life, I was born as a male child. When doctor announced me as a male child, I grew up as a male child, and I went to a school where it was a boys' school. It was very tough. I always felt that I'm the only one person in this entire world who's born like this, who's a male child, who feels there's a woman, soul trapped inside her body. So all of these difficulties were there. But in this patriarchal society, I have seen, especially in Indian context, where a male child is born, there is a lot of expectations are from the male child. Male child will be somebody who's gonna take care of the parents, who gonna take forward the name of the family, and who gonna do a lot of things, protect the woman of the house. So all those expectations was from me, but I am still fulfilling them, because I completed my education, and I think I was able to do each and everything any cisgender male and woman can do. But still, a lot of people in my community face the same problem. When I talk about myself, I think it is also an opportunity that I should talk about all those people who were not fortunate enough. And slowly there is a change, and we are progressing. And yes.
Yeah, it does feel like that a lot. I mean, I know exactly how you feel, that sense of there being certain expectations. I mean, you would really like it if those expectations were not there for the male child either. It's like, sure, there were expectations of parents by parents for their children, but yes, even those, like even not fulfilling their most essential kind of needs. So you studied at, you did your university degree? I know you have an undergraduate degree, like but you did that on distance learning. So you were still living with your parents at that time, yes? So you stayed in Delhi?
Yes, I was born and brought up in Delhi, and I did my schooling, which was a boys' school. But when it was about to, go to college, I was very, very afraid. And, at that time, I used to hear a lot about ragging with journal student. And I thought I'm somebody who's so effeminate, in this, manly body. And if I'll walk into the college, I'll be ragged, and, people will make fun of me. And there is a possibility that people will, harass me, because it's not the only college thing. During the school time also, I faced a lot of time, abuses. And it wasn't only, sexual assault, but it was, physical abuse. It was, direct and indirect kind of, things people used to tell me. And, and they used to tell me one thing: why are you behaving like this? Why are you, not, behaving normal? So even if people are not physically, attacking you, but when they say such kind of a thing, imagine for a young children who just want to study, who want to do good in life and get a good job. If he or she goes through this thing that you are not normal, and you are, you're creating nuisance, and you are somebody who should not be here, it's a tough life.
Yeah, and it does feel like that. I mean, it's a very normal sense, like especially in India, that because actually Hijra communities have been around for a very long time, the sense of who we are in society is quite kind of concrete. Whereas I think in I don't know, we have been hiding, and certainly I grew up like you. I did not know what I was. My government had a rule which meant they weren't allowed to talk about gay people, so they certainly weren't going to talk about. The teachers were not teaching. I was not taught. There was no way of learning. There was no way of learning. There was no one to see. There was no one to hear. There were not people like yourself. So of course we did not know. Of course you feel alone. Of course you feel that you are on your own in the world. And I think that it's very admirable. I know that I have often, when I particularly do not want to do things, try to think of people who might see it and go, well, because the very first thing I came out, someone wrote to me and said, it means a lot. You mean they hire transgender people at Google? And I was like, oh, darling, yes, you should meet the engineers. There are quite a few. And it's a huge hill to climb on your own, though. What is the trans community like in Delhi, in India? How does you talk? I know you talked a little bit earlier about, or we talked earlier about Hijra families and Hijra and like all of that side. Can you talk to that at all?
So see, I'll again go back into my past when I was very young, and I used to feel very different. And at the same time, when I used to see Hijras, and there was a curiosity to understand who these people are. Even I was very afraid of Hijra people, because my mother used to tell me, oh, don't do anything naughty, otherwise they'll take you away. And I said, no, I don't want to go with them. But slowly, when I grew up, and my time, I'm 42 right now, and when I was very young, there was no internet, there was no resource materials, there was nothing and no organization to reach. And you were a very confused person. But when I was 18 plus, and I started going out, I started meeting people, and my transition was not like, from a male child to transgender. At very young age, I identified myself as a gay person, I thought like I got to read, first article where this group of people were arrested for having an organization and having, this LGBT resource material, saying that they are promoting homosexuality and they are, doing obscene things. At that time, I thought like, oh God, okay, I'm a gay person, but slowly when I started meeting more people from the community, then I realized, no, I'm Koti, and Koti means in India is somebody who in a social structure is a male, but believes she's a woman. And in my transition, when I was Koti, I started going meeting this Hijra people, because there was connection of Koti people and Hijra people. And when I went there and I started meeting them, and every myth was broken. It was till that time I believed that Hijra people are somebody who was born intersex, and senior Hijras come and they take them from their parents, and this is how they grow. Then they told me that Hijra person are also born in family like male child, but in reality how they felt and their real gender. So they, and at same, when they are not valued by the families, they are not taken care by their own biological parents, there is a system which exists. And this system was a Hijra culture system where it is an entire matriarchy, and it's so beautiful. It's you have your grandmother and your mother and you yourself and your daughters and your granddaughters, and this matriarchy culture of Hijras, which is the very old ethnic culture of trans community in India. It's been written in the mythological books and old texts, and it existed. I realized one thing: the Hijra community was the only community who adopted trans kid, who adopted especially trans women identifying kids, and they taught them how to survive in this difficult and ruthless world. Maybe there is very limited resources and opportunity for transgender community within the Hijra structure, where they can do sex work, or they can do the traditional way of earning money, where they go bless a new wedded couple or newborn child, and in return they get money. And so, but every myth was broken, and I realized Hijra family was one of the culture and system where trans people are protected.
Yeah. So, Rudrani, when you talk about that, I think it's actually worth us unpacking a little bit, because I think that we may, it's been an education to me. First of all, I did know of Hijra because I think actually trans activists generally like to refer to it, because it's a very useful kind of staple of understanding that not only have trans people existed, but that we are documented, and we have been here for thousands of years, and we need that like sense of antiquity to know that we are not some aberrants, that societies have, that we have always existed in societies in different roles. And it is a very, very sort of, there's a certain beauty to that idea that India is, of course, India, they're so enlightened. They will understand that this is a natural state of spirit and of the soul, and that you can sit between, and that obviously we exist. And then you look at the Hijra community, and the way you describe it, which I think is very accurate, is that it is like what we would call a security net, a social security net. Like it acts to save, to catch children who are being, and you just kind of brushed over it, really, they are let go by their families. They are not supported. There is no social support. They fall into the arms of their mothers. And I think it's a very beautiful image. But the thing I would like, I mean, I don't want to dwell on difficulties particularly, but I think one thing that we both would like to see is more opportunities for education and employment for people who are Hijra, because they are sort of socially limited. Again, not a common concept that you would have your employment opportunities limited by the fact of a matter of your birth. But certainly in India, yeah, you're how are you limited? How does that work? How does it mean that you can only really be begging or sex work or the celebrants within the weddings and the marriages and the births, that and how that works as well? What does that mean? Why only those three things?
So I think it was with the idea that somebody who is, because the whole idea and understanding of transgender in cultural terms, Hijra people, was somebody who cannot ever get married first of all or have kids. So people in India and I think rest of the world believe that an individual who cannot reproduce and make babies and have more families are useless people. So I think this was the idea, and the idea of these children are born intersex. So the whole idea was, if you don't have anything between your legs, your entire existence of human is gone, and you're absolutely of no use. And at the same time you do exist, so you can go around and you can do whatever you want, but we cannot make you part of the main system where education is protected for people, human beings, and jobs are there for people, the legal system protecting another human being. So if the entire idea of all the rights which came with what you have between legs, I think it was taken away, because this was the understanding that Hijra people are hermaphrodite and they are kind of a useless human being. They are kind of they are disabled people, they are not of any use. So this was the idea.
Yep. I've been called worse, I think, but it's very interesting when it comes through in sort of in law. I mean, law is in LORE, like this sense of how society is structured, that people have taken a long, hard look and gone, yes, they exist, that's fine, but they're not a functional part of our society, and therefore they sit in this space. And do you think, because I think that view is still fairly prevalent, I do think there's a really interesting challenge that and despite the degree with the passion with which I disagree, and the passion with which I will explain to anyone that someone who has seen life from both sides and fully experienced all the privileges and discriminations associated with them gives us a view on the world that I think is not very common. However, yeah, we are still in every society. Just yesterday, there was in the Australian government right here in Sydney, or they were in Canberra, they passed a motion saying that we didn't really exist. Basically, it wasn't a law; it was just a little motion, and so they snuck it through. But there's a piece of it's in the government, and the government stood by it, and the government supported it, and it really genuinely says, oh well, they're not, not real people are male or female and like have marriages, and yes, we have gay marriage and all of these kind of things, and you want to go, that couldn't how can this happen still? And that's here, that's in our country. So how do you think, like, you've done an awful lot, actually. I think you individually, Rudrani, have done an awful lot to change people's perceptions and to challenge those kind of ideas. Do you think it's changing? Like, I mean, it is. Can you talk a little bit, actually? Maybe I was leading towards the court judgment recently about the rights of third gender, but how did that come about? How is that? Can you talk a little bit about the journey through to that point?
Okay, when you say it is changing, I think we cannot sit and think of it should change or not. It has to change. Which is something wrong, it has to change. And I see my community. It's not only me. It's other people like Rudrani all over India. They have been very proactive and they have been very vocal about their rights. That they realize and they know, they're aware of their existence, and they believe that everything which is there available in the system, it's also their right and they should get it. And I see change happening because it's not only about the recent law which made, recognize third gender as gender. But I
Mm-hmm.
see other institutions, other system who are also willing to understand and, and break this communication gap. Because I believe for a very long time, very, very long time, there was a communication gap where this cisgender, heterosexual, men and women thought we are one group of people and these people are another group of people. Now that idea is changing. It is not, 100% of change has happened, but there is a change which is taking place, especially when I see the young generation. When I go to college, when I go to, the other institutes and different law colleges, engineering colleges, girl colleges, they are so excited. They are so, willing to learn. And they ask me all the time what we can do to contribute and what we can do to make, a life of a transgender person better. And yes, I share my experiences. I share my experience. I tell them one thing you should always do is, next time you meet anyone, please talk. Break this communication gap which you have just because this is how you have been conditioned. And it is not your fault. Maybe your parents were conditioned, the same way, but you are educated, you're literate, and you're willing to understand, and you understand. So don't teach the same thing to your kids.
Yeah, it is that thing of community. Yeah, like the very littlest thing, or the very biggest thing. I don't know. Is within your family, within your friends, within your circles. People are always saying, "What can we do to help?" I think someone said, "What can Google do to help?" And it's like, actually, the first thing that anyone can do is stand up, because this thing happened last night in the government. No one's standing up and saying, "You can't do this. This is not okay." And I think that we end up in these situations. Well, trans people have spent millennia like fighting for survival, and it is very hard to have to organize everyone else to help as well. You just want them to. It's like, but you help, you do the organizing bit, because there's a lot we're still trying to do with ourselves in our lives. But you have organized things, Rudrani. Like, talk to us a bit about the Mitr Trust or the Mitr Trust? Like, that was back in 2005. That's a health initiative. How did that come about? What did you do? Why?
Oh, so when I was young, I always wanted to be not actually the label. Today I identify myself as labeled activist. I do not even self-identify myself as activist, because I believe what I'm doing is my responsibility. It's not, my job. It is my responsibility, because as a transgender person, I'm very lucky that I finished my education and I have connections and I can, talk about my rights. But a lot of people don't have. When I was young in 2005, I went to 2004. I went to this organization who used to work with, LGBT people. And when I went there, they said one thing: please behave normal. So the whole idea of that organization was, just because I look like male, so I should be acting like male, be macho and, be aggressive with, just whatever the idea of, the man is. And at that very moment, I stepped out of that organization. I said, no, this is not happening. What I want to know is who I am and how I can live a life without feeling guilty about myself. And I went to this park, and some other people who believe the same way, who followed me, and we started having this small meetings about what is happening in the family, and how we are treated in the schools, and those kind of things were happening. And then somebody said, if you want to help more people like you who feel and they want to live a real life, then you should get structured and be formalized. And this is how Mitr happened. And since then, I think we don't have one fixed mission, objective, and vision. We can change it anytime. I think anything which transgender person or LGBTQIH plus people want to have for themselves, for their better life, without harming anybody. Because I've seen people from my community harming anyone. They just want to live their life peacefully and be, you know, first of all true to themselves. And this is how this organization happened. We run, you know, a lot of different programs, whether it is HIV support, whether it is, you know, social inclusion, whether it is education, whether it is job. And since then we have been doing all the thing which we believe is for us and we should be getting it.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I have not heard it articulated like that. I really, that idea that to form an organization simply because too many people, it's like this idea we have over here of gatekeeping, where people who are supportive want to also keep you within your box of who they are to you. Whereas I know that I did not know who I was or who I wanted to be, and that exploration and that journey can't be set for you. Like it is a very beautiful thing. We would definitely call that a queer principle, which is that you are always sort of queering at a political level. You are contrary to the normative, to the accepted or the established views. And it even gets to the point now, I think, where we have within mainstream homosexual society some quite normative ideas about how relationships are and exist, that in the queer society, or certainly within the trans community, they don't tend to fall so straightforwardly. And it's a very interesting journey to go on, to learn from having been that, from having been a very kind of that person that you just described, that one who acts normally, which I did. I was very good at it. And to understand that this is just an idea and that you can reject it, and that the best way we can do that is by showing and telling and communicating. So, Rudrani, like the other thing, the amazing thing, the thing that like I first learned about you was the modeling agency. Like, how did Bold come about? Did that come out of the same sort of place?
See,
and when was that? That was
nothing was planned in my life. Honestly,
no.
Very honest, nothing was planned in my life. I remember one of my birthdays, it is in October, and you know, I went end of the September month to a mall, which is a shopping mall, which is of, you know, different very fancy big brands and, you know, fancy restaurants. So I wanted to book a restaurant for my birthday. And at the gate, that security guard stops me, and he tells me in Hindi that there is nothing available for people like you. And that statement, you know, I was numb, I was shocked, and I was, you know, I stood there for almost 30 to 45 minutes when my other one friend who accompanied me there. And I did not even ask her anything, and I was questioning myself that who I am. Rudrani, who are you? That you're not allowed inside this mall just because this mall is a place where you get fancy clothes, fancy makeup, you know, good food, and there is no space for it. And I thought the fashion was the biggest tool for me at that point, according to my own, you know, brain brainstorm.
No, I'm completely with you there. That's fine. Fashion is absolutely the biggest tool.
I thought we need to do something. It cannot be, you know, if somebody wants to help transgender person, you'll give her or him a sewing machine and say that you do your little job and, you know, you earn your livelihood from there, and you do crafting thing. And, you know, I wanted to come in front rather than being, you know, backstage. You know, there is always, when people want to do something for transgender, they always want to keep them backstage. I wanted to come, you know, in front, you know, the front stage. And I thought like modeling is the best way. And this is how we started our modeling agency. We did a lot of shoot, and it is not, you know, super speed kind of a thing, but slowly and very, you know, it is making a change. A lot of people, a lot of girls from my, you know, modeling agency, they have been able to get small little jobs, which is not paid very highly, but there is talking about the existence that trans model do exist. Trans, you know, actors exist, trans artists exist, trans people are not only sex workers, or trans people are not only beggars, they are also artists, they are also singers, they are also dancers, they are also performers. They can be anyone. So modeling agency is just one of the things, I think, and it can escalate to anything. I think one day I see not only modeling, I see a transgender person to be a prime minister of India. This is how I see, and I think this is how we should begin with. I've recently read somewhere that in Bangladesh, a transgender person, she has become a news anchor, and this is the change, and this is what we all wanted.
Yep, we do. We need those role models. I mean, it is a thing. It is a really important thing. It's like the best part, actually, in a way, is that we are also moving towards I think a stage. I was talking about you actually to a friend of mine, Swati Bhattacharya in Delhi, who runs a big agency, and she makes a lot of adverts. And she said, "Oh yes, that she'd cast you in an advert." And then this turned into a really interesting conversation about how that hadn't been a trans role. It wasn't a. She was meant to send me the film. I wanted to show it to you. I wanted to surprise you with it. But like she that wasn't because you were trans. It wasn't to portray a trans person.
If they start getting a character or role of any, cisgendered character, and this becomes also the livelihood for them. But when it is equivalent, it's not only when, there is a trans character and which is being always played by a cisgendered person, with the idea that trans person are not worth and they don't have those qualities of acting and performing. I think that is where it goes wrong. And in this Danish film, when I see, I find it okay, because it is not a caricature of a trans woman. But when you see this, most of the Hindi films, from the past and a very recent one, trans people are always shown kind of a caricature. It's never the real them. If somebody who's a cisgender person and that person is doing fairly good job, and do his or her research playing it, I don't mind it, because I believe when we talk about the equal society, I think tomorrow, if any girl of mine who passes as a woman and she gets a big role in the film, and she gets really well paid for it, I won't mind. And it won't be like, transgender people are taking away their jobs. But it is not the point that
they will say that though.
Yeah, you should not, do the caricature of someone's, some individual, some people whom you don't know. And Hindi film has been drawing us this.
Yeah, Rudrani, I agree. And I know that Indian film has some quite vicious caricatures, some quite vicious kind of stereotypes. And that's where you get this whole kind of evil, like a throwaway lines like transgender people are evil. And I know that we can walk outside and we can meet people who will agree with that. Still today, we're not talking about an enlightened society. You and I are very privileged to be able to speak, but we have a long way to go. I know that I often talk about being raised on Ace Ventura. These are the representations that I see. Like they're played for jokes, or they're crying. Like they are played for tragic, horribly tragic characters, and they have still, to an extent, been played that way. And I do feel like we're just tipping over. And I wanted to talk to you. I know we will not run out of time maybe, but we will be taking questions, I think, soon. I did want to ask you about your film, which came out last year, which was The Last Color, where you do play a trans woman, but it was kind of striking for the director, I forget his name, but for the director's sort of enthusiasm to cast you, and also then for the critics who just were like, of course she plays her so perfectly. So how was that for you? What was it like? Did you enjoy it?
Again, it's one story. So we have this agency, pole modeling agency, and when this chef Vikas Khanna, who's a Michelin star, he was making his film The Last Color about widows of Banaras who are in very bad condition, and there is a very prominent role of this transgender woman who protects this child. So they made me audition for it, and I said, like, okay, I'm auditioning for it, but I'm not going to do your film because I have a lot of other work to do. And when he saw my audition, he said, no, you have to do it because you fit so good and you are so real. And I did it. With the idea that if I make it, this was also in the list of the Oscar, though it did not make it. And when I believe that if this is going to bring any kind of a positive change, I'm willing to do it. And I did it. And thankfully, it has been appreciated and a lot of people like me. Until date, I get a lot of, DMs when people say, oh, we loved you seeing on screen. And this is not only about me, and this is open, venues for a lot of other girls. This film industry, this entertainment people, they're looking for trans people, they're approaching trans people, and they're doing their research. It's not, blindly they are started, now making films. I believe there will be, some kind of problematic problems in the coming times, but at least there is a beginning. They have started talking to trans people and they have started taking in trans people. So this
there's a very significant moment when and Sarah's just very kindly pointed out that it's I'm looking at questions. If anyone wants to ask questions, this is now a very good moment to start. But she points out that it's the Danish girl that's the film, and also that trans people were involved, and it's Eddie Redmayne who's the actor, and the trans people were involved. I know this very well because I was quite close to it. But I think at that point I was still just so pleased that we were going to have a non not necessarily positive, but it was clearly not going to be a hit job. It wasn't going to be played for laughs. It was not going to be, and your character is a strong, powerful, important character in the film. It's not throwaway. And those are role models. These are, when you talked earlier about celebrity or fashion, you do think again and again that it is it's very hard to reach millions, or in India, billions of people who don't care. And they don't have to care. We don't want them to care. But we can only teach them not to care in a good way by being in those situations. And that's sort of the difficulty, I think, of the journey at the moment. So I am just looking through some questions. Vipal asks, can you shed light on ways in which a youngster or a student can be active, can be an active contributor in the community, or help build an inclusive company? What's a way that they can do that?
I think, as I earlier mentioned, that when I go to school and colleges and when I speak to young students, I think they are willing to listen, and I think they are likewise this question also, what they can do. I think what you can do is you can create a environment which is not at all different for trans people. Sometimes when you try to be bad to somebody, it is visible. But when you try to be extra nice to people, it again shows this positive kind of a stigma and discrimination. So one student, for example, if somebody, a trans student who comes to your class, or you meet somebody who's not student outside, you just treat them normal. And the word normal should be normal. Sometimes using this word normal also makes me very angry. It should go away. And if you can be you're behaving with your sister, brother, or any other friend, if you can do the same with others, I think everything will change. Everything will be so smooth for other person to be in that very place and access whatever he or she wants to. Don't stop treating differently. When the term itself, when you see what we can do for others, it gives a very strong impact in a negative and positive way. You just have to be very normal. It's just like you treat others, you have to treat everyone.
Yeah, I talk a lot about normals and normative things. And it's a very curious word, because it's sort of it comes from a Latin word that basically means right angle, and I was told that that comes from meaning the same as the mean. In other words, if you have a right angle, the tallest side of a curve, or the average, or the mean, or the median. So we're going to get a bit geeky and mathsy, but it's important. It's like this word normal just means common.
Yes.
It's like you want to be the most common. No one wants to be the most common, but in society, it's also the safest thing is to be the least uncommon, the least abnormal. So we want to be different, but we want to be different within that degree of normal. It even means something like square, like it's square. Like I like this. Normal means square, and average, and it is a tragic word because it does mean that people who do not get that choice, we do not have a choice. We do not get to sit outside of that. So I think that anything that anyone can ever do, really, that really promotes that sense of or celebrates the abnormal, celebrates the fact that across this spectrum we are all in our ways abnormal. It's very hard, it seems, for people to do. We have a question from who asks, what kind of challenges have you faced in dealing with fashion brands and assignments for the modeling agency?
Okay, so when I started my modeling agency, we did this big shoot, and friend of mine supported me with camera people. This camera person who flew from Mumbai to Delhi, and he did a shoot, and we made a big profile out of it. And with this pictures, when we reached the other agencies who give jobs to models and brands, they said one thing to me: the Rudrani, what you're doing is fabulous, but we believe that our clients are not ready for it. And, it was like, whatever you have done is gone waste, but I did not let go. There is difficulties. There are brands who want to work with transgender people, and they get targeted most of the time.
Really?
And they are bullied. I mean, the people write all kind of silly things about them. So there is problem. There is not jobs available for trans models, actors, and those people who really want to work with them, they are bullied and they are targeted. And also, most of the time when trans people are getting job, I think they are not paid fair, or like equivalent to it. It was like you go a few years ago, or back, or it happens still the same, where a man gets paid more in comparison to a woman just because he's man. I think it is happening with us right now, where a man gets more and the woman gets little lesser, and third gender or transgender people usually do not get at all. There was some people who said one thing to me: Rudrani, we are doing a good thing about you. We are putting you on cover of magazine. You should feel happy about it. Why are you asking money? And I thought, like, how to deal with it. So
yeah, because they're selling their magazine. It is very difficult when you say the things that men would normally say, which men actually don't have to say. But when you even use the arguments that women have had to use to fight for fair pay, we have just had International Women's Day. It is still there's still a financial imbalance that makes no sense. That is not fair, and really genuinely comes again through this idea of systemic discrimination through centuries, and how hard it is to change attitudes that people don't even understand that they have. But yes, we are always to be helped. I'm always being like, people are always being supportive. And actually, when they're being supportive, it means they value you less because they think they are giving you something, when actually you're giving them your time and your face and your wisdom. So it is. I don't know what the answer to that one is, but yeah, I agree.
I also see it like, how can a time which has been spent there, you worked the equal amount of time which you are given to an organization or a company or a brand, how a man's time, a male person time, is more valued than, the rest of the other, gender people. So it makes no sense how our time is less valued.
Oh, there is so much when we stop and think about it that makes no sense. I am very, very often interested in pronouns, in personal, the third person pronouns. And I don't know how this works in Hindi or anything, or actually even in gendered languages. But in English, we have he and she and her, he and her and his. And we will use those very often about someone else. You very, very rarely use them in person, which is why it's always rather difficult when you hear someone off talking about you and they use the wrong gendered pronoun and it crushes you and you want to go away and cry, and then it's something which seems never to leave. Like, it never leaves. I don't know why I care.
People on my face call me sir, so it happened.
Yeah, no, I know. I got that the other day, actually. I know, it's like, I thought I was slightly past this. I was like, what? And quite often it is simply because they know, and their brain has done some weird thing, and they know it's a piece of information. Before that piece of information, they would not have made the mistake, but after that piece of information, and so you go, so you want me to disclose this information, but so that I can teach you not to, like, it's a very, very painful thing that we're asked to do. I think there are so many things, like, I think the whole thing of using he and she in itself, it means that you know who you're talking to and whether you should pay them more. All of these things. We do have other questions, but like we could roll on. We have a few more minutes. So Farah asks, just want to say thank you very much for joining us. And what can you say about the, I think this is a big question. What can you say about the impact social media has had on your work, both for good and bad?
I think social media has played a tremendous role educating, people. And I think it is a very strong tool where a person like me cannot reach, but through social media, I can, make my reach. And if I am, if I make sense through whatever content I do, if it making some sense, I think I can bring a change. And social media, we get to hear a lot of time, that social media can be curse and boon at the same time. But I see, for me, it has become a very, strong tool to at least communicate from one end that this is what the problem is, or this is what our needs is, this is what our demands is. I hopefully want to see a day where in the world of social media, even trans people like me, the LGBT, the queer community also become the social influencer, and people are willing to listen, and, people are willing to follow them, and people are willing to, admire their work. So I think it's a big tool, and it is a very, very strong way, and, to communicate, and you can make your existence through it.
I think it's really interesting because you say that, and I was like, I have friends in the UK, like Charlie Craig, or like, and Paris Lees. Like, I know a lot of English trans people who are making not quite career. Again, it's that thing of like, you are known by you are known, very well known. I have a trans friend called Lily who was very famous in the English press and on Twitter, and yet was sleeping on, when I first got in touch with her, was sleeping on a sofa because she didn't have enough money to do anything. And yet she had, 20,000 likes, and, and you go, oh, this is very strange. I sort of imagined that you would be she had influence, but nothing. And so I think it is an amazing platform because, exactly, people like Lily, a schoolgirl from Kent, can have an immense effect. But it's also very hazardous because there's a lot, as we know. It's a very dangerous and a very difficult place. And I think we all have to be very careful. And I would never even have this conversation without saying to anyone watching that you don't have to be on the front line every day. However much you are taking this to them, to your community, however much you feel like you are in that battle, it is really important for all of us that no one burns out. It's really important for you to take those breaks, step away from social media, put it down, and maybe just find a friend to do the hitting back for you. I'm very lucky in that I have a partner who has taken it upon herself. I did not ask her to do this, but to report people who are mean. She just sits there of an evening and goes, because it doesn't affect her in quite the same way. Well, I think it does actually affect her quite a lot. but it is the most beautiful, loving thing that anyone has ever done for me. I did not ask her to do this, but she goes out of an evening and reports them, and that's very special. That's love. So there are things people can do that might not be the things that they naturally think. Rudrani, there was one question which I remember, which was this will be the last question, which was if you wanted anyone to take something away from this. I mean, Rupal was talking earlier about being overcome and being invisible. And then Sophia asked, like, if there's one thing that people could take away from this conversation, what would it be? What would you want them to remember?
I think for me, I don't know what people can take away, but I personally believe that sometimes we feel that we are not worth just because the entire world believes so. And we have to stop doing it. And because people who do not respect themselves, people who do not love themselves for who they are, I think for me it has been like this, that if I cannot love and respect myself, I may not be able to love and respect anyone in this world. So I think first person who is important in this world is me. I should be taking care of me. I should be loving myself, no matter what gender I am, what color I am, which country I belong to, what is my height, what is my shape. It doesn't matter at all. I should be loving myself for who I am, and with the very conscious mind that I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not creating problem for anyone. I'm just trying to live my life as, again saying, as common, which is for everyone. And I think if people start believing in themselves, that who you are is important, and you can contribute in your own capacity. You don't have to go, over the way to do, million things to make other happy. You can, start doing from yourself, start making yourself happy, start living a quality life for yourself, start demanding, what is your rights, just because the entire world believe it's not your right, and they can be fooled, and you don't have to trust them.
Rudrani, that is a very hard thing to ask. I hear that so much. It is very hard for me even to remember all the time that we need to love ourselves, and we need to value ourselves, and that's really important and very valid. And I think that's a beautiful thing to leave everyone with today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a total privilege to talk to you, and I do hope we're going to get to do some more work together soon. I normally ask everyone to applaud, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Tea. You made everything so, nice and convenient for me to, it was just like talking to another friend. And I'm very honored to meet you and your entire team. I hope we stay connected, and it means a lot.
We shall. Thank you. All right. Let's bye-bye.
Take care. Namaste.
Namaste.